You are listening to The Hero's Journey. I'm Dan Zarzana.
And I'm Jeff Garvin.
Let the journey begin. Welcome to The Hero's Journey, where Jeff and I analyze your favorite books and films using the lens of Joseph Campbell's Hero's Journey monomyth, as well as Christopher Vogler's modern adaptation, as described in his book, The Writer's Journey.
It's October, spooky season. So we are once again looking at the horror genre. Dan, our generation saw the rise of slasher films and their many sequels. And parodies.
Ad nauseum.
Yeah, man. And so for this episode's poll, we selected the holy trinity of Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees, and Freddy Krueger. Sorry, Dan, that didn't win the poll.
Oh.
Friday the 13th was third with 19% of the vote.
I honestly thought that one was going to win.
A Nightmare on Elm Street placed second with 25% of the vote. And the winner in a landslide was John Carpenter's 1978 cult classic, Halloween.
1, 2, Freddy's coming for you.
No, Dan. No.
Oh.
Written and directed and scored by John Carpenter, Halloween was produced on a budget of just $325,000. Released in theaters on October 27, 1978, the film earned more than $47 million worldwide, making it one of the most successful independent films in cinematic history. Wow.
Yeah, it's kind of on par with American Graffiti in terms of its dollars spent to dollars earned success. In addition to making John Carpenter a household name, this film also launched the career of the first Scream Queen, Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yes.
Who, by the time the David Gordon Green trilogy is completed next year, will have appeared in more Halloween films than she has not appeared in.
I like that. I like that she's stuck with it, even though she really didn't have to at all. That's really cool.
Yeah, she doesn't like horror films, she said.
Wow.
And so she bounced on the genre after doing several. She was in Halloween 2, and then The Fog, and Prom Night, and then she bounced and she's I'm going to do comedies. So she did Trading Places and A Fish Called Wanda, and then she came back to the Halloween franchise.
The timing of this episode works out because the second film of that trilogy and 12th Halloween film overall will have just landed in theaters 2 weeks prior to the release of this episode. So hopefully we can absorb some of that box office mojo.
Yeah, if you're listening to this because you Googled Halloween movie podcast, then welcome. We hope you enjoy our niche perspective on the film.
All right, we'd better get into it before those folks swipe left on us.
Let's do it.
Lock your doors, bolt your windows, and turn off the lights. This is the hero's journey of Halloween. Dan.
Oh.
Act 1 begins with Ordinary World, in which we see our main character in their status quo normal life. Dan, this film has something we both love, a prologue. We open on Haddonfield, Illinois, 1963, with an amazing opening sequence. I love the opening sequence of this film. It's the thing I like the most about this movie. It's what got me to take it seriously as a piece of cinema.
It's all downhill from here.
Pretty much. So we got a handheld POV, and we approach this 2-story suburban home, and we're looking through a window at a teenage couple making out. And then the watcher, this POV, follows them around the house into a different room where the boyfriend teases the girl with a mask and then says, okay, let's go upstairs. So they go upstairs, and the watcher enters the house, and we see a hand reach out to open a drawer and pick up a big butcher knife. And upon the rewatch, I noticed that this was a child's hand wearing some kind of silk costumes, blue silk costume. I didn't notice it on the first watch. I just saw hand grab knife. The hand grabs the knife and moves farther into the house and then stops as the boyfriend descends the stairs and leaves the house. So then our creepy POV with the knife heads up the stairs into the room where his sister is, picks up a mask and puts it on. So now the mask that the boyfriend dropped is on the camera and we're seeing through these two little eye slits, right? So we are inside the killer's head and he approaches, well, we don't know it's the sister yet, but he approaches this girl who's naturally still naked and brushing her hair in front of the mirror. And he brings up the knife and stab, stab, stab in maybe the worst cinema death until later in the movie. And there's blood and she screams and dies. And then the POV walks downstairs outside the house as the parents pull up. And, I forgot a big important thing, which is when he stabs the girl, she screams, "Michael!" So now we know, she knows the killer. So then he goes downstairs. Presumably the parents arrive. They take off the mask and we cut to a wide shot of a 9-year-old child or 8-year-old child.
Sick. He's 6.
6-year-old. Oh, disturbing. Wearing a clown outfit and holding a bloody knife. Mm-hmm. And that is the end of the opening sequence. Holy cow.
Yeah, it's pretty shocking. The hand you mentioned that grabs the knife is the hand of producer Deborah Hill.
Interesting. Well, I like it. Even if it's a cheat, I like it because that reveal of the mask coming off, cut to it's a child, was surprising. It was surprising when she yells Michael, and it was surprising when the mask came off. And those two surprises, that immediately made me want to watch the rest of the film. Now, to me, the film doesn't live up to that opening sequence, but we'll get there later. Okay, but that's just the prologue, Dan.
Right.
We're still in the world of present day here. So we know that the killer in the movie is a psycho who killed his sister on Halloween in 1963. Cut to, we are now in present day Smiths Grove, Illinois, the day before Halloween 1978. And we get a doctor named Loomis riding in the passenger seat of a car at night. And he's played by Donald Pleasance, who I have a lot in the tidbits. He and a nurse are driving toward the asylum to pick up a deeply disturbed patient who's been locked up for the last years and totally silent for the last 15 years. And if you do the math, you go, okay, it's got to be the killer, right? This is the killer from the beginning. They're picking him up to take him to court. So I just breezed past that because I don't understand why he would now be going to court after 15 years. Like, why would it take that long? Maybe
I think it was probably going to be it was a hearing. It was in front of I don't think it was court. He was going to be in front of a medical board to determine whether or not he could be transferred to a different hospital or lighter security. And that whole conversation between Marion and Dr. Loomis is setting up how dangerous the patient is and how Loomis doesn't think this guy should ever be out of maximum security for the rest of his life.
Right. Yes. So then we see a very sort of clunky, conspicuous shot of a red matchbook that says Rabbit in Red Lounge. And we're like, oh, okay, I guess that's going to be a clue later. So this is still...
Jeff, you are too fluent in film language. Let the people enjoy the movie.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry. So as they pull up to the asylum gates, these figures in white gowns appear at the edge of the headlights. And it's almost like
a spooky image.
It's like a zombie movie almost.
That's exactly right.
So something is wrong. And Loomis is like, yeah, I'm going to get out and open the gate. And at this point in the movie, I'm like, well, there goes Loomis. Why did they hire Donald Pleasance to get killed in the first 5 minutes of the movie? But a patient jumps on the roof of the car almost like a werewolf and starts to try to pull the nurse out, and a hand comes down from the top of the car and smashes the window. So now we're like, oh my God, this person is superhuman strength. So the nurse flees, and one of the patients gets in and steals their station wagon and drives off. And you're like, this is bad. This is all bad.
Another Grand Theft Auto reference.
Yes. Okay. This is getting better. I didn't look at it through the lens of Grand Theft Auto. And then Loomis comes back and reassures her with a line of dialogue that kind of sets up the tone of how this movie's going to go. He says,
"He's gone. He's gone from here. The evil is gone."
He's gone.
Dr. Loomis.
The evil is gone.
Dr. Loomis, not the most modern take on mental illness, okay? All right? So
Although, I mean, you got to give it to the guy. He spent 15 years trying to reach this person. And I mean, you get a whole story later where he tells more of his history with.
I guess mental health care was somehow different in the 70s because as a person who has extensive experience with the mental health care system in the United States, to find a doctor who would be interested in you for 15 years, who wasn't a research doctor, is a fantasy. Anyway, so we cut one more time back to Haddonfield, but now it's Halloween 1978, exactly 15 years after the murder of Judy Myers by her little brother, Michael. And now we meet our heroine, Lori, as she's leaving for school, carrying a mostly empty bag and then a giant pile of textbooks. She's going to have spinal problems for the rest of her life, and that's the real horror of this film. Why not put the books in the bag? I did not understand. It's a big bag. But it was a character choice because, she's smart, so we got to show her carrying all the books. And then there are lines about how she's the smart one, and she forgot one of her books. As the first act continues, we learn that she's the Hermione of her group, right? She's the book smart. She's a little square. Mm-hmm. But we also learn that she's brave, as I think will be revealed a little later. I'm going to call that Ordinary World.
Which leads us to the call to adventure, where the hero is presented with a challenge which renders them unable to continue living in the comfort of the ordinary world. So as you stated, Lori is leaving for school. Her realtor father, who we never see again, even in the sequel, reminds her to drop off the key to the old Myers place under the mat because he's got some buyers coming by later to look at the house.
This prime, well-kept property with great curb appeal.
All right, so as Lori's walking to school, Myers' house key in hand, she's joined by Tommy Doyle, played by Brian Andrews. This is a little boy that she babysits, and she's going to be babysitting him tonight, as we learn via the dialogue. As they discuss their Halloween plans, they're going to carve a jack-o'-lantern, they're going to watch monster movies. The next couple of segments are all, truncated. They're squished, they're compressed. That's the word I want. They're compressed into 30 seconds of screen time and 3 lines of dialogue. They stop in front of the Myers house, and Lori tells Tommy that she's got to go put the key up under the mat. And Tommy says, "You shouldn't go up there." Lonnie Elam says that that's a haunted house, that some bad stuff happened there. And Lori says, "Watch me." And she runs up the walk, puts the key under the mat. And this act is what inflicts the adventure upon Lori. Because now, as we see from inside the house, a dark and hulking shape watching Lori and Tommy. And that is the shape that hunts her for the rest of the film. I kind of wondered later on, Lori's at school and they're talking about fate.
Yeah.
Had she not dropped the key off at the Myers place, Michael would not have targeted her.
Man,
So that for me was the call to adventure.
Well, you are now into the end of Act 1 for me.
Okay.
More than any movie we've analyzed, I struggled with this. I thought I had Act 1 pretty nailed, but we're already off course. So I'm just going to unpack what you just said. So the next step of the adventure is refusal of the call, where the hero is confronted with fear of the unknown and either refuses the call or is impeded by an outside force who tries to stop them from answering the call. So for me, the call to adventure was go put this under the Myers mat. Because like you said, this is the moment, unbeknownst to Lori or anyone, that's going to put her in the path of Michael Myers and draw her into the adventure of trying to survive the psychopathic murder spree.
Hey, Jeff.
So, yeah.
Hey, Jeff.
Yeah.
I'm reviewing my notes because everything you're saying is making sense.
Yeah.
And I just completely got carried away when I was talking about the call to adventure.
Oh, you just ran into the... Okay, good.
I just ran right through it. My notes for call to adventure are Lori's father tells her to put the key under the mat. And then she's joined by Tommy, and they talk about their plans for the evening, because that's like the two of them talking about what they're going to do. That's like their little adventure together. I don't know
Okay.
why I just railroaded right
Blasted
through that
through.
entire section. So
Right into the ordeal without any.
So I'm
looking back.
totally with you. Totally with you.
Okay,
here.
good. Look, Dan, I think this is going to get.
I'm so
I
sorry.
think this is.
Should we start over?
No, this is way better. I think this is going to. This is how it really is, listeners. I feel like my instinct is to say this is going to go off the rails. So this is just this is foreshadowing, in my opinion. Okay.
Oh boy.
So we're back on the spot. So to me, the refusal is refusal from without. It's Tommy telling her,
You're not supposed to go up there.
Yes, I am.
That's spook house.
and I think that moment serves a double purpose. But I'm gonna, unlike you, I'm gonna stick to just my section and let you take us forward.
I just got excited, that's all. Okay, next segment. Supernatural Aid, or Meeting with the Mentor, where the hero receives counsel on how to operate in the special world. Now, golly, Jeff, I sure didn't see a whole lot of mentorship for Lori. There wasn't a whole lot of counseling on how she should operate in this special world of being hunted by a psychopath. Most of the time, she doesn't even know she's being hunted. Not really. She sees weird things, but she's not really sure what she's seeing. So what I saw as the moments, at least within the film, that fulfill this place in the journey is Dr. Loomis at a payphone by the railroad tracks calling the police of Haddonfield and telling him that Michael Myers is headed home and they'd better be ready for him. By the dialogue, it doesn't sound like the police are taking him seriously because Loomis says, well, it's your funeral.
Interesting.
It is mentorship to the audience, reminding or at least continuing to drive home how dangerous this escaped asylum patient is.
Yeah.
Lori is never the recipient of this information.
It's funny, this part of the movie reveals a horror trope that I think takes place in Jaws too, which is the collective community's denial of what is happening and the efforts of the few to ring the bell.
Yes.
He's the Richard Dreyfuss of this, or, saying, oh my God, this is not a, this is a big shark. It's a big shark.
Yeah. And then in the rest of the scene, we see Loomis investigating what appears to be a crash site of some kind. There's a red pickup truck that's run off the road and into the bushes.
Next to the payphone by the train.
Yeah, a weird place for a payphone booth.
Yeah, man.
In John Carpenter's previous film, Assault on Precinct 13, there's a payphone that appears to be in the middle of nowhere. Again, I thought that was interesting. I wonder if is that a thing for John Carpenter? Remote payphone booths? Anyway, Loomis investigates this red truck. He finds that matchbook that you referenced in the previous segment, and he finds the discarded sanitarium gown that Michael was wearing when he escaped. So we see that Michael has put on a new outfit, and the camera pans over to a dead body with blood all over it.
I have Loomis telling the administrator at the mental hospital and Brackett as part of Mentor. I have two other sections.
Oh.
I think Tommy telling Lori about the Myers house.
Honey, that's a haunted house. He said awful stuff happened there once.
Serves double duty as refusal and as mentorship. In fact, Tommy and Loomis are the only two throughout the movie who take this seriously.
Yeah.
And then I had another one. It's an accidental mentor moment, but the jump scares in this movie, there are some in here that I find really cheap. But this one wasn't cheap, which is Lori is walking down the sidewalk. She's just had that weird encounter where Michael Myers was hiding behind the bush, and she runs into Sheriff Brackett and has this big surprise moment. And Brackett says,
It's Halloween. I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare, huh?
which is terrible advice. It's like the mayor in Jaws. That's not going to be one scare. It's going to be a series of horror. Anyway, so let's move on to Crossing of the Threshold. The hero must pass a barrier to enter the special world. To me, arguably, the special world here is the struggle to survive the hunt that Michael Myers is now on. Like you said at the beginning, some of these segments are super, super compressed. And to me, Laurie crosses the threshold when she steps onto the front stoop of Myers' house. She steps up to the threshold and places the key under the mat. It's an act of bravery, showing that she's unafraid, and it's the thing that sets her in the path of Michael Myers. This sets her on the adventure. She is now inexorably tied into this world.
Exactly.
And we switch to a POV from inside the house, and we hear heavy breathing, and a silhouetted figure steps into frame. Michael Myers, we presume. And then he comes outside and watches her walk away. This was surprising to me because we almost never see the killer standing out in broad daylight in horror films. They're always in shadow. I had two reactions. One, oh, that's interesting. That's different. And also, it kind of took the scare away from me because it was like, oh, it's just a guy. He's not a monster. He's just a dude. So I had mixed feelings about that. But that's what I see as crossing the threshold.
Yeah, totally agree. That
Awesome.
was part of my railroad journey when I blasted through the entire Act 1.
Okay. I'm glad we're still on track. Let's take a break and head over to the Campbell Cafe for some side quests.
Jeff, how's your coffee? What do you got there? You have a marshmallow in that?
No, it's thanks to patron Melanie Nelson, who got me hooked on Nespresso. I now have Nespresso with super foamy crema at the top of my coffee. I haven't tried this blend before. This is called Giorno, and we'll see how it is. Normally I have a blend called Stormio, which is bitter and dark, like my soul. This is
like your soul. Damn it,
is,
you beat me to it.
This is like Giorno, like day, sunny. So we'll see how.
Well, good. I hope you enjoy that. I'm just drinking plain black.
Dan, how have you followed your bliss this past month?
Well, contrary to my normal character, I did very little video gaming, and I did very little reading. My two primary activities, what I did do, and I don't know why this happened, but I think I just got a wild hair, was I watched a ton of movies.
Nice.
This past month. I watched 14.
Holy crap.
Bunch of them were sci-fi, going back to like 1965's Alphaville, directed by Jean-Luc Godard, which was a really interesting film that I'm not sure I like, but I keep thinking about it.
Huh.
It's about a detective who travels to another planet, to the capital city of Alphaville. The only thing about this film that is science fiction is the dialogue. There's references. There's a lot of like 1984-ish dialogue that exposes this city of Alphaville and maybe the entire planet as totalitarian. There are words daily that are outlawed, and a new dictionary is printed that either has that word omitted, or sometimes a definition of a word will change. Like yes and no are reversed.
Oh, that's
so there will
weird.
be scenes where somebody is saying yes, but they're shaking their head no. The sense of confusion and otherworldliness and stranger in a strange landness that he feels is felt by the viewer too. And it's an unsettling... That's why I'm saying I'm not sure I enjoyed the movie. It is undoubtedly a well-made film, and it's really interesting, but the experience of watching it was not comfortable. So I don't know how I feel about it. There's voiceover throughout the film, too, that is the voice of the computer that runs the city. It's an AI called Alpha 60, and the voiceover is performed by somebody using an electronic voice box.
Quel est votre nom? Où êtes-vous né? Quel âge avez-vous?
If you don't know that it's somebody using a voice box, it's you're like, what is going on? It's this weird voice. It was, I don't know, Jeff. I don't know if I liked Alphaville or not, but it has stayed with me since. Yes, it has. Yeah, since I watched it probably a month ago now. It has stayed with me. Bunch of other movies that I watched too. Assault on Precinct 13, which was John Carpenter's 1976 film that he made before Halloween, produced on a $100,000 budget.
Wow.
So the man is used to working with on a shoestring. It's an homage to Rio Bravo, which I also watched, which is a 1959
Jeez, man.
Western starring John Wayne and Dean Martin, written by Lee Brackett,
Oh,
who
Empire
also
Strikes
wrote
Back.
The Empire Strikes Back, The Big Sleep, and for
Jeez.
whom the sheriff in Halloween is named. The sheriff's name is
Brackett.
Lee Brackett, and he's named after the screenwriter Lee Brackett.
What an unsung female screenwriting hero. Like, why had we not heard of her until you did these deep dives? That's amazing.
What did you do? How did you follow your bliss?
You know, I'm looking at my list, and I enjoyed quite a bit of entertainment. It's been a very stressful month, and last week was kid half days all week, and I just about lost my mind. So Grand Theft Auto has been a huge stress reliever, but
I converted another one, guys.
yes, you did. I watched a bunch of movies. I showed my kids Jurassic Park. That movie holds up 100%. I love it.
It sure does.
I read a bunch of books. I read 2312 by Kim Stanley Robinson. I love his writing, and I love his science fiction imagination. I loved Aurora is a 5-star book for me. This one, I did not enjoy. It was hard to get through. The science fiction part is great. It's all about terraforming the planets of the solar system, terraforming asteroids, building biomes off planet. And that part was fascinating, but it really read more like a manual or an alternate history of the technical parts of terraforming. But the characters in the story were very thin and clearly were just a skeleton to hold up all the cool science stuff he was fascinated by. So that, I didn't enjoy it that much, but it was beautifully written, and the sci-fi part is strong. I read a book by Michel Faber called Under the Skin. This book is unlike any novel I have ever read. It's a first-person perspective of this woman who picks up hitchhikers off the highway in Scotland, talks to them until she finds out whether they are adequately willful but not too willful, and then as soon as she's comfortable with them, she flips the switch and needles come out from under the seat and inject them with some kind of knockout drug, and then she takes them back to a barn. And you don't know why. And the author plays with our assumptions so hard that like a third of the way in, he flips the table on you. So you, what? I've been assuming this, but that's not true at all. And then he does it again. And then about 2/3 of the way through the book, you realize it's science fiction, and you haven't realized that the whole book. So it like totally organically changes genre. It's mind-blowing. I highly recommend it. They made a film with Scarlett Johansson that is not good. It's like a David Lynch obscure non-linear thing that it represents the weirdness of the book well, but don't go see the movie. Read the book Under the Skin by Michel Faber. Highly recommend. Haven't read a book like it.
Got me convinced.
And then finally, I completed the 12-week course by Julia Cameron, The Artist's Way. If you're a creative person out there, you may have heard of this course. It's been around since the early 90s. It's a 12-week self-guided course to recover your inner artist. It's a series of reflective writing exercises. The two primary tools are morning pages, where you get up each morning and write 3 pages, longhand, whatever comes to your mind. Not necessarily part of a story, but like what happened today or what you want to do. And then there are specific writing prompts and exercises that you have to do to kind of uncover what it is that's blocking you, what's in your way, psychologically, spiritually. And then the second exercise is artist dates, where you take your inner artist on a date. You go to a museum, you go walk on the beach, you sort of do the things that you wouldn't normally allow yourself to do because you think you should be working. I found it tremendously helpful. It gave me the courage to start writing a new kind of story that scared me and was out of my genre and out of my comfort zone. And that was a huge takeaway. It also sort of helped me uncover that I miss acting, and that I wanted to put my toes back into the acting pool. So I signed up for an acting class taught by our longtime friend, Curtis Anderson. Turns out he's a brilliant acting teacher. So it definitely gave me results, and I'm glad I did it. That said, a lot of it rubbed me the wrong way, and maybe it was supposed to, but there's a heavy reliance on spirituality which is not a big part of my life. The word God is invoked a lot, and she encourages you, if you're not religious, to swap in the universe or fate or whatever it is. But I found that part off-putting. And then a lot of the exercises were like, go start a rock collection, pick up flowers and press them. And I didn't want to do those things, and when I did them, they didn't produce any kind of impact to me. So my recommendation to you is definitely do it if you're looking for a mind change, and take what works and leave what doesn't. But that's The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. And that was 12 weeks of my life. So I felt like I had to talk about it on this podcast. And that's what I did.
That's a lot of bliss that we followed. I think that's enough. We should dive into Act 2, because I think this Act 2 is going to be a lot of crying.
Not much bliss in this
and
part.
frustration.
Let's go.
So let's do it. Act 2 of the hero's journey begins with tests, allies, and enemies, or the road of sitting down while your friends get murdered across the street. Having crossed the first threshold, the hero meets allies, makes enemies, and must pass a series of tests to prove their worthiness. So the allies for Laurie, little Tommy Doyle. He is, I think, the biggest ally for her.
Yeah.
Dr. Loomis, who isn't an ally until the last 10 seconds. And then...
Well, I think he's trying to rally the troops. He's trying to help prevent the murders. So I agree. He
fails completely.
He does.
In every aspect.
Yep.
Even his final act is a complete failure.
Yeah.
Continuing allies... The only other characters that really have any impact on Laurie at all are her two friends, Annie and Linda, played by Nancy Loomis and PJ Soles, respectively. But I don't even really see them as allies.
No.
They don't do anything for her. In fact, during the film, I'm wondering why Laurie is even friends with these two.
They use her and put her in harm's way over and over. Yeah. They're awful
Guaranteed,
people.
Laurie writes Annie and Linda's term papers for them. Guaranteed.
Yeah, right?
All right. Enemies. Michael Myers, for sure, or The Shape, as he is known. And that's kind of it, except Tommy, he's got an enemy, Lonnie Elam, and the two bullies that run around with him.
They should have been murdered. That would have been justice for Tommy.
You see any other characters? That's pretty much it. I mean, this is a low budget movie. You limit the number of characters you have on screen. In fact, I even think the dad could have been cut completely. You didn't even need that character. Laurie could have come out of the house, walk down the street. Tommy Doyle joins and says, "Hey, how come you're taking this route to school?" And she says, "Oh, my dad wants me to drop the key off under the Myers place." That could have been it.
That would have made it even harder for us to identify the call to adventure. But the only other person I listed who is somehow significant but not really is Sheriff Brackett. He's a bumbler, though, and he really fails to protect anybody. So
yeah, the sheriff is completely ineffective.
Yeah, he's sort of a pinball that just kind of bounces around ineffectually between characters. So I don't blame you for leaving that out.
Yeah, some of his interactions with Loomis though are pretty funny, I think, in my opinion. We'll get there. Yeah. All right, first test. Laurie is sitting in her English lit class, and she looks out the window, and she sees a brown station wagon. And first, when we see this shot, the brown station wagon is the biggest object in frame, and so your eye is drawn to that first, and then you see this ghostly white face over the roof.
Yeah.
And there's this man standing across the street. And what is interesting about this image is this is our first look at Michael's face, the mask that he's wearing. And at the time, we don't know it's a mask.
Right.
This is your first image of it, and it's from a distance, and you just see this white, featureless face. It almost looks like maybe somebody who's got horrible burn injuries, something like that. And her teacher calls her attention.
Laurie?
Ma'am?
Answer the question.
Costain wrote that fate was somehow related only to religion. Whereas Samuels felt that, well, fate was like a natural element, like earth, air, fire, and water.
That's right.
So even though Lori is distracted, she does successfully answer the teacher's question. So we see that Lori is an intelligent young woman. She looks out the window, and the car and the man are gone. Vanished. No trace.
Yeah.
We didn't hear the car start, nothing. It's like, was it even ever really there? Next test. School is out. Little Tommy Doyle is at his elementary school, leaving. He's carrying a big pumpkin, and now he's bullied by Lonnie Elam and his goons. They tell him the boogeyman is going to get him, and then they trip him, and they cause him to fall on his pumpkin and crush it. And as one of the bullies runs away, he collides with the shape. The camera then follows the shape as it gets into the car, and it stalks Tommy across his school grounds and down the street before it speeds away.
I think that the continued appearance of Michael Myers about town in broad daylight, wearing coveralls and a big white mask, the town's repeated failure to recognize that, I think it is a continued failed test.
Good points.
If horror is metaphor, this could be a metaphor of, society's denial of its ugliest and worst problems.
Yeah, you're right. This is a complete failure, really, of Sheriff Brackett, because he has not taken Loomis's call seriously. Was a description of the car not provided?
I mean, it had to be. It was literally stolen from Loomis, who's warning everyone. So if he failed to describe the car, and it has a seal on it, like from the hospital or from the whatever. It says for official use only. So anyway. Yeah, I agree. Okay, good. I think we found the answer there. That is a fail, not of Tommy, but of the community, the police department. Yeah, I totally agree.
Next test. Lori is walking home after school with her two friends, Annie and Linda, who are mean and bad influences on her. Annie is bummed because her boyfriend Paul has been grounded and won't be joining her as she babysits tonight. Linda is a busy cheerleader, not a very good student. She's got this line, I always forget my chemistry book, and my math book, and my English book, and my French book. And while they're having this conversation, Lori sees a brown station wagon driving slowly down the street behind them. And then as they all make eye contact with it, it starts to speed away. And Annie taunts the driver, hey, jerk, speed kills. And then the driver slams on brakes and stops the car.
That was a surprising moment for me.
Is he going to get out of the car and take one of them out right now?
Whoa, Michael Myers plus road rage equals what's going to happen.
Right. Now, a lot of people ask why Michael Myers targets Annie. And I think if there's any reason beyond just sheer randomness, this is it.
I agree.
And as the car drives away again, Lori says, Annie, someday you're going to get us all in deep trouble. Which is possible foreshadowing, but I think Michael already has plans for what he's going to do tonight. So I think it's not really foreshadowing, it's just solidifying what's about to happen.
I don't know. I think this is what adds her to the target list for sure. I mean, that's such such a significant response from him to slam on the brakes. And then you wonder, is he going to go back and confront him now, or is he like, nope, putting her on my list. I'll take care of that later.
Yeah. So, fail for Annie here. And did you notice that when Michael slams on the brakes, Annie, when she's saying, geez, can't you take a joke? She's like, takes a step behind Linda. Like she's hiding behind the taller Linda.
Oh, I didn't notice that. That's good.
Lori, on the other hand, appears to be on high alert now. Her spider sense is tingling. She's very uncomfortable. There's something weird about this guy. This is the second time that she thinks that she has seen him. The next test, Lori looks up later on this walk home from school, and she sees this man standing on the sidewalk next to a hedge, and she stops, and she alerts Annie, who looks up, and the guy's not there now. And so Annie hurries over to the hedge to confront the guy, and there's nobody there. We've not seen Michael run, but he sure got out of there real fast if he was even there at all.
The only time we've seen him move quickly is at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, when he scurries onto the roof of the car, right?
Yeah.
If you watch closely, according to Mike Stoklasa of Red Letter Media, this is where I heard it anyway, when Annie goes to the hedge to look for the creepy man, and she calls back to Lori and says, he wants to take you out, you see a wisp of cigarette smoke drift into frame from the left. And this is because John Carpenter was standing next to the camera smoking a cigarette during the scene. So, pass or fail. Laurie is still alert. She's still concerned, but Annie is a cynic. She's not buying into...
It's a fail for Annie because this is an opportunity to take this seriously. Not only does Annie refuse to believe what her best friend, who's clearly shaken, just said she saw. I mean, imagine you and I are walking down a street and I go, Dan, there was a guy in a white mask and coveralls. You wouldn't be like, oh, you're an idiot, wah, wah, wah. So not only does she do that, but she like goes up to check and goes, ooh, he wants to see you. He wants to go out with what a horrible friend.
Yeah, she's taunting.
Annie and Linda are... And I think this is a horror trope. You want them to die. Like, you want them to be the ones who get punished. I don't know. They're horrible people. Terrible friends.
Agreed. All right, next test. Laurie is approaching her house and she hears a noise. She goes to investigate, and it's just some kids trick-or-treating. And she says to herself, well, kiddo, I thought you outgrew superstition. And then she kind of smirks at herself as she walks back into her house. Mm-hmm. But... as she is putting her books on her bed in her room, she looks out the bedroom window and sees the shape standing amongst the sheets that are drawing on the clothesline outside. Mm-hmm. Camera cuts away to Laurie's face, who is looking at the clothesline, and when the camera then cuts back to the clothesline, the shape is gone.
Yeah.
So was it ever even there? Laurie didn't look away, which would have given the shape time to vanish.
Right.
She is making eye contact the entire time. Is that bad direction, or is that intentional because Carpenter wants the viewers to wonder if Laurie ever really saw the guy in the first place? That's what Annie has been saying. You're seeing things. Mm-hmm. That's this moment then. Now Laurie's beginning to doubt. And then she gets a phone call from Annie, and I don't know, Annie just bit into a peanut butter sandwich or something because all you hear is obscene chewing. Laurie hangs up thinking it's an obscene phone call. And again, when Annie calls back, she says, you're losing it. And Laurie says, I've already lost it. And then she lays down on her bed and says, just calm down. This is ridiculous.
So this is as good a place as any for me to say, I did not enjoy this movie. I had so many problems with it. And I think about when someone else has watched a classic film that I admire and love, and they say they didn't enjoy it. I always think, what didn't they understand about it? Or why do they not like it and I do? Mm-hmm. And it occurred to me, I haven't watched a lot of horror movies. Like, it'd be like if someone half my age said, ugh, the Beatles suck. And I just blew my mind. Like, so many movies probably have been influenced by Halloween that to say you don't like Halloween is to sort of reject it. So I don't know the history and the context of horror movies, particularly the slasher genre. Yeah. So I know I'm missing a lot of context here, but I did not enjoy this film. And so it was tough to analyze because I just felt that so much of it was ridiculous. And you brought up a good point, which is the shot where she looks and then he's gone. Like, that defies the logic of the character to throw that into doubt. I don't know. It really bothered me.
A lot of the horror film tropes that are common today came from this movie.
Yeah, that's what
So if you are a student of the genre, this is one of those movies that you hold up as, the one that started it all. There were, of course, horror, slasher movies before, but Halloween is the one that really got the ball rolling in a big way for the genre. That's why the 80s were a huge period for that genre. That's why we got Sean Cunningham, the director of Friday the 13th, said he was basically just making Halloween again when he made Friday the 13th. This faceless, hulking murderer who just slaughters teenagers.
Well, before I get a storm of tweets at me, I just want to say I recognize that there's something missing in my appreciation of this film. The horror movies that I have enjoyed are probably more suspense thrillers than horror. I mean, The Shining is horribly bloody and terrifying, but it's definitely a suspense movie. So the suspense of, we know there's a killer outside, but we're going to watch the girl fold her laundry and get into the car. I wasn't connected to the character, so it wasn't suspenseful to me. But that's not the point of these movies. So anyway, I abandoned, I'm not going to harp on the things that I didn't like about the genre, because I think that's counterproductive.
Here is where I have a problem.
Okay.
I have two different analyses from this point on, because I cannot decide. My first analysis was to draw the line here and call the approach to the inmost cave Laurie leaving her home that evening and going to the babysitting job, because that house, or at least that neighborhood, is where all the bad stuff happens.
Right.
That is the dark place. That is the inmost cave. It's also, that's where we transition from daytime to nighttime.
Mm-hmm.
But I then second guess myself, because none of the bad stuff happens to Laurie. It's all set up for the bad stuff that happens to Laurie. So I can't decide whether it is more tests or if Approach to the Inmost Cave is just super long. What's your thought on that? Do we transition to Approach to the Inmost Cave now and then continue and try to discover this?
Well, I think the linchpin here is going to be ordeal and reward.
Well, yes, and that's why I say.
So this is where I drew the line from test. So let's transition to Approach to the Inmost Cave. The hero reaches the edge of a dangerous place where the object of their quest is hidden. Like your first instinct, getting in the car and heading to the babysitting job, to me, is the beginning of Approach. Also had a logic question here. So in the morning, when Laurie is walking to the Myers house to slip the key under the mat, she runs into Tommy right down the street. But now she has to get in a car and drive across town. Does that make sense? Like, wouldn't the Doyles be within walking distance if she's running into Tommy on her walk to school like that? I didn't understand that, but whatever.
Well,
they get in the car. Yeah.
Here's a little background on that.
Okay.
And maybe this will help. The novelization of this film, Annie picks up Laurie and they drive around town for a while looking for people to hang out with before they go to their babysitting job.
Okay.
So maybe Annie says to Laurie, I'll pick you up a half hour before we have to actually be there, and we'll drive around town for a while, hang out with whoever we find, and we'll smoke this joint before we go to our babysitting jobs.
Okay.
Which are across the street from one another, but Laurie says earlier that the Wallace house is 3 doors down from the Doyle house.
I'm babysitting the Doyles. It's only 3 houses down. We can keep each other company.
Oh, terrific. I've got 3 choices. Watch the kids sleep, listen to Linda screw around, or talk to you.
But they're actually right across the street from one another, so Laurie doesn't even understand the geography of her town.
The map is it's like the plot from Primer. So she gets in the car, they smoke the joint, and Laurie smokes it very badly, which is funny. And they start driving into the heart of darkness, right? The place where all the bad stuff's going to happen. To me, it was a pretty clear beginning to the Approach. Loomis heads to the graveyard and discovers that Judy Myers' headstone has been stolen. And he says the very sinister line,
She came home.
He's got a flair for the dramatic, Dr. Loomis. I like him. And then Laurie and Annie run into Annie's dad, Sheriff Brackett, who has COVID and therefore can't smell the billowing pot smoke that must have been filling that car. And he says, in his ultimate incompetence, he tells them, somebody broke into the hardware store. It's probably kids. They just took Halloween masks, a rope, and a knife. So it's going to be fine. And Annie, by the way, is a total dick to her father, too. Just completely, makes him seem like she is a jerk through and through.
Played by a 30-year-old.
Ugh, horrible. Well played, because I loathed her. And I felt like, Laurie, get some better friends. And now at the end of the movie, she will have to. And then this is the end of my Approach. Loomis arrives to talk to Sheriff Brackett. And Brackett's like, yeah, I'm busy. Please hold. No one in this town is taking anything seriously. And then you see Loomis kind of looking around, sort of bird-like, twitching his head, and then, the station wagon drives by in the background. So it's like, the idea is he's everywhere and everyone's missing him. And so to me, the next thing that happens is clearly the beginning of the ordeal.
That's where I had it, too.
Oh, good. Wow.
So, ordeal, where the hero faces the ultimate test, often risking death to overcome their worst fear, sometimes actually appearing to die. It is now fully dark. Laurie and Annie pull up in front of Tommy Doyle's house. Laurie gets out of the car, and then here's why I thought, wait, what? Because, again, the Wallace house is supposed to be 3 doors down, but Laurie gets out of the car and starts walking up to Tommy's house, and then Annie just pulls left 90 degrees and pulls up into the driveway of the house across the street.
Right.
Now that the ladies are at their babysitting jobs, this is where the dark stuff happens.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a very long sequence of events. And you're grinning at me, so I think you're disagreeing, or you're just so chuffed that you agree with me that you can't stop smiling.
No, this has to be where it falls apart, but I feel this is the weakest part of my analysis. So I'm hoping
me too.
that you will rescue me from this, but please continue.
Okay.
Oh, I also wanted to say that upon second viewing, I often watch the movie with closed captions on.
Mm-hmm.
So I can see the dialogue. And one of the things that really bothered me about this movie is the score. I love the music itself, but the way it's used became almost comical to me, because it's like cut to Michael Myers and you hear that theme. And then there's 2 other themes pretty much. And I know he wrote the score in like 3 days, but it's comical the way it's so repetitive. And the closed caption person kept trying to find different ways to say what the music was, but it came down to like 3 different phrases that matched those music cues. So even if you can't hear the music, you know it's that same piece of music. And for the boo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo, it says unsettling piano music. and then heavy breathing. And those things flash. So it even made it more comical as I'm watching the second one. Anyway, please continue.
All right. Now you've got me nervous.
Heavy breathing.
So the 2 ladies head off into their respective babysitting houses, and Michael pulls up right there on the street and watches Annie go into the Wallace house. He's standing in their front yard, halfway behind a tree, but still, he's like right there on the sidewalk, and nobody sees him. Or this unusual brown station wagon that's parked right in front of their house. Don't you, when you walk outside your front door, if there's an unfamiliar vehicle parked right next to your driveway, do you not notice it and make a note of it at least?
See, this is another, it must be a genre thing, but to me, it would have been much more terrifying if Michael Myers just disappears from the movie for 10 solid minutes and it's just happy babysitting, because then we'd be like, wait, where is he?
Yeah.
But when we see him pull up, it's like, okay, how long until he checking the watch? When's the first murder? But I think that's the genre is, okay, now it's who's going to die first and how and when, because it all comes down to who dies first.
So then you can't quote your own song.
Because it all comes down to who dies first.
I just did. It just happened.
All right, we cut to
Jeff Garvin,
Sheriff Loomis.
Moment.
That's your Jeff Garvin musician moment. All right, Sheriff Loomis. No, not Sheriff Loomis. Dr. Loomis and Sheriff Brackett now arrive at the Myers house to explore.
Yes.
We see it is dilapidated inside. There's a dead dog that is still warm, apparently. And Loomis says, looks like he got hungry.
He got hungry.
More of these lines from Loomis. And then we get the history of Loomis's interaction with Michael as he delivers this somewhat of a monologue to the sheriff.
I met this 6-year-old child with this blank, pale, emotionless face and the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. I spent 8 years trying to reach him, and then another 7 trying to keep him locked up because I realized that what was living behind that boy's eyes was purely and simply evil.
Now, Loomis thinks Michael's been to the house once already tonight, and he thinks he's going to come back. So Loomis is going to wait there for him. I don't know what he's going to do if he sees Michael, except maybe just gun him down, because it's established here that Loomis now has a handgun. I liked that the sheriff said, "It seems to me you're just plain scared." And Loomis says, "Yes, I am." I thought that was a good moment in this film.
And without someone with the gravitas of Donald Pleasance, I don't think this movie would hold together at all. Because he at least makes it seem super scary and legit, like a legitimate threat. He's the only person, he's the only adult who's telling us this is messed up.
Cut back to Laurie, and Laurie's ordeal is that she is sitting on an orange sofa with orange pillows and orange window curtains. This is a nausea-inducing room.
I'm so glad that you recognize that as the ordeal, too. It's just the assault of color. The 70s were really hard.
Now we get to the murders, which are not ultimate tests for the hero, but okay. You're making faces and sighing at me. Talk to me. What's up?
I have the murders as road back.
What is the reward then? What is the ordeal for Laurie?
So this is the part that I think is the weakest, but here's what I have in place. And I don't have a lot of defense. I have things to prop up why I think the murders are the road back. But this movie is just one long setup for murders. And I couldn't find a pivotal turning point. But here's what I have.
What's the ordeal?
So the best, clearest part of the ordeal to me is when Loomis takes Brackett to the Myers house and they find the dead dog. That's the first death in present day. Until now, there's been no violence. So this leads us into hero witnesses death. Now, Laurie doesn't witness death, but Loomis is an extension of Laurie in this story. He's the only other person who ever actively tries to stop Michael Myers. And so to me, they're linked. They're linked by fate. And that death is what begins the cycle of violence. Then there's Laurie sitting with Tommy on that horrible couch, like you said, and she's disparaging his choice of literature. Tarantula Man, which, by the way, I have some tidbits about Tarantula Man. The phone rings, it's Annie, and they're talking about teen stuff, and the Wallace's dog starts barking. And Annie's like, "Lindsay, take care of the dog." Like this little kid that she's babysitting should somehow manage the dog, not her. And she's like, "I hate the dog." I mean, could Annie be any less likable? She says, "I hate the dog."
Lindsay!
And then the dog stops barking and whimpers. And of course, Michael Myers has murdered the dog. So now the violence is adjacent to these women. The threat is right there.
Yep.
And Tommy looks across the street and sees Michael Myers standing on the porch and says, "The boogeyman is here."
Yes.
And he alerts Laurie, but when she looks again, he's gone. And this is a theme in this movie, is the disappearing. This is where Laurie makes the critical mistake, because she's been the one saying, "There he was, he disappeared." And no one believed her. And now she's doing that to Tommy, right?
Yes.
She fails to take him seriously.
Tommy, there's nobody outside. Go watch TV.
We go back to Annie.
Lindsay!
We hear Brackett, not Mr. Brackett, but closed caption Brackett, heavy breathing. He's watching Annie, and we realize, oh, that's who the dog was barking at. We hear the dog die. And Annie's now glad, oh, he stopped barking. But we know the quiet is not good. That's 2 dogs Michael Myers has killed. And I still like him better than I like Annie.
Lindsay!
Okay. Annie goes to wash her clothes in the laundry shed behind the house, because that's something you want in a place where it snows a lot, is to have to leave the house and go to an outbuilding to wash your clothes. And she locks herself in. Now, That's where I have ordeal ending.
What?
Yeah. I don't have, like,
That doesn't match either of my two different analyses.
Yeah, why don't you unpack your different analyses now?
My first analysis goes from Annie's murder to Lori getting suspicious and crossing the street to investigate the house and then Michael's attack on her.
Okay.
That is the end of the ordeal for me. Actually, in both of my analyses, it's just, is the ordeal really long or is it the approach to the cave is really long? But that's where I draw the line. I need to know where, and again, the only reason that I draw the line there is because the reward.
What's the reward you selected? Since let's transition to reward.
Well, I don't know, because we've just skipped 90% of the film.
Well,
so I don't know how to talk about this. So we've got the murder of Annie. She's getting in the car to go pick up her boyfriend, who has called and said, my parents just left, so come pick me up. So she gets in the car, Michael's in the back seat, strangles her, cuts her throat, Annie's dead.
I hate a guy with a car and no sense of humor.
Tommy witnesses this boogeyman carrying Annie's body around the Wallace house in through the front door. And again, calls out to Lori, the boogeyman. Oh, we forgot to say that Annie has brought Lindsay, the girl that she's supposed to be babysitting, and like sloughed her off onto Lori.
Yeah.
So here, you take care of this kid. I'm going to go pick up my boyfriend.
Nice. Great friend.
Lori then, this is Lori telling Tommy, there's nothing out there. You're scaring Lindsay. Just stop. There's no boogeyman. There's no such thing as the boogeyman. We cut back to Loomis. Loomis is still hanging out by the Myers house. And Lonnie, Tommy's bully, and his two friends are doing a little dare, and they walk up to the Myers house, and the two friends dare Lonnie to go inside the Myers house.
Right.
And as he's doing this, Loomis is like hiding behind his bush. He does this really weird, like, is he supposed to be doing a scary voice or what? I didn't know what this was all about, but he goes, Hey, Lonnie, get your ass away from there. And the three kids get scared and they run away. And then Loomis looks so pleased with himself.
Yeah, why not?
Like, it just, just
he's
harassed these kids. And then the sheriff comes and freaks him out, startles him.
Well, it seems like it would be way more in character for Loomis to step out and say, get away from there. And he's authoritative and the kids would have run off. But instead he decides to trick them. And it says so out of character for Loomis. Maybe he just wanted to have a little fun.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Hey, Lonnie, get your ass away from there.
And then the sheriff comes up behind him, scares Loomis. And the sheriff says, I think you've got this all wrong. I've been driving around all night. There's nothing. It's just a bunch of kids having fun, playing pranks on each other and stuff. You're not giving me anything to convince me that I'm wrong. And Loomis says, well, what more do you need? And at this moment, I literally spewed my coffee all over my computer because I thought that was the most hysterical line. Like, what more? I've been standing by a bush all night. What more do you need? How else can I convince you that this is a terrible, awful situation? Like, isn't that enough? I choked on, I laughed. I mean, I've just like vomited coffee all over down the front of my shirt and my shorts, and I had to go change clothes. And I wish
that was on video.
Oh man, it was a moment. It was a moment.
The other thing that makes this so ridiculous is that the sheriff, I hope you cut in the clip. The sheriff says it'll take more than fancy talk to persuade him. And then Loomis proceeds to give him more fancy talk.
Death has come to your little town, Sheriff. You can either ignore it or you can help me to stop it.
More fancy talk.
It's like, what is this scene? What?
Now we cut back to the Wallace house. Linda and her boyfriend Bob show up.
Yeah.
And here again, we've got like another really long sequence of Linda and Bob. They go into the house. Annie's not there. Lindsay's not there. No, wait. I've got to call something out here that really bothered me. Before they get out of their van, They're drinking beers and they're talking about how they're going to go upstairs. You know, as soon as Annie puts Lindsay to bed, we're going to go upstairs and go in the first bedroom and Bob says, oh yeah, I got it. First I rip your clothes off, then you rip my clothes off, then we rip Lindsay's clothes off.
Yeah.
Is the dialogue. Lindsay, the little girl.
Then you rip my clothes off, then we rip Lindsay's clothes off. Yeah, I think I got it.
Totally.
Yeah.
Now, is Bob a pedophile? And therefore, Michael, do your business with him? Or did the actor misspeak and he was supposed to say Annie's clothes?
I don't see how they could have dubbed in the right. That's just too gross to leave in the movie. Right. Yeah, that was super disturbing.
Yes.
If it was a stupid joke, it was a gross, stupid joke, and Bob should have said, oh, I didn't mean that.
Yeah.
But everyone in this movie is so unlikable, particularly the three people who die.
Yes.
And I think that's probably a slasher trope, but that's one of the reasons I didn't enjoy the film is nobody dies who I really cared about. And I guess I should just value human life if I'm watching, I shouldn't wish death on anyone. But in the context of a movie, it should be, a tragedy when people die. But they all kind of deserve it.
Yeah, but is that the trope? They establish, you create these characters that are so awful that you hate them, and that's why you want to have horrible things happen to them.
And by the way, when they go at it on the couch, Linda just tosses her beer onto the floor.
Yeah.
So your friend is supposed to be babysitting this house and you're spilling beer and smoking cigarettes. What a horrible person.
Yep.
She's going to get Annie in so much trouble. I mean, she would have if Annie wasn't dead. But anyway, horrible friend.
Okay. So now we've got the murders of Bob and Linda. They go upstairs when they realize that Annie and Lindsay are gone. And they shtup in, I don't know whose bed. Is it a guest bed? Did they just go up into the master bedroom and they're, what on earth? Anyway, they do that. Bob goes downstairs to get some beers and Michael kills him in a very physics-defying manner.
Bracket, heavy breathing, jumps out of the closet, bracket, it said, bracket, dramatic synth.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, pins him to the closet door with a knife.
That isn't even long enough.
Yeah.
And that door is so flimsy that he would just pop right off. There's no.
And you don't hear the thunk of knife in wood. You just hear.
Yeah, you hear the thunk of knife in watermelon.
Yeah.
So and then Michael stands back and just tilts his head a little, admiring his work.
Yeah.
Either admiring his work or wondering, wow, how did I actually pin him to this flimsy cabinet door with a knife? Anyway, so all right, bye pedophile Bob.
Mm-hmm.
Good riddance. Now Michael apparently puts on a sheet, takes the time to cut little eye holes in it, and puts on Bob's eyeglasses, and goes and stands in front of the. Are you saying that sincerely? You think that's really funny, or are you being
I do
sarcastic?
think it's funny.
Okay.
I do think it's funny that I guess you could say, well, the kid had a mask thing, so maybe he's putting on a costume but he already had a white mask. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense that he did that.
I think it shows that Michael is just messing with these people. Linda then gets up to call Lori. And as the phone is ringing, and here's another thing that shows that Michael is toying with people, because he waits until Linda is on the phone with Lori before he begins to strangle her, so that Lori hears Linda gasping and crying out. And at first, of course, Lori thinks that it's Annie having sex, but then she gets suspicious. And she looks out the window and she sees the light in the Wallace house go on and then off again. And then she calls the house and there's no answer. That's when she decides she's going to go take a look. And I am now approaching the end of the ordeal. Again, we've got Loomis. And he's standing next to the Myers house by his favorite bush that he's been standing next to all night. It's kind of like Linus in the Great Pumpkin Patch. And he suddenly sees the stolen station wagon 10 yards away. The whole night he's been standing next to that bush. All he had to do was turn his head slightly to the left.
And didn't Michael Myers park the station wagon on the block where the babysitters
that was
are?
part of I had that was part of what messed with my head a little bit with the geography of this area. But we do see a shot of the Doyle house later, and the car is no longer there. So at some point, Michael moved the station wagon. Now Loomis again is on the hunt. Now he's left his bush and now he's wandering the streets. Lori decides she's going to check across the street, goes into the house, and all of this, I know this is why I had a problem with this segment of the film, because we're getting into the last 20 minutes of the movie. Yeah. And this is still Act 2. So I fought with this so much, but the only reward I see is upcoming, and that is Lori checks the house. She finds the bodies of Annie, Bob, and Linda. And Michael attacks her, cuts her arm, she falls over the banister, lands on the stairs, hurts her leg, but she escapes. That's the reward, question mark? Is her escaping? I see no reward, and that's why I really want you to tell me what you see as your reward, which apparently took place 45 minutes prior, because that's where your ordeal ended.
I had Annie surviving getting locked in the laundry room and getting to connect with Paul as the only thing I could see. And it's not connected to Lori, and it's not connected to Loomis. It's the weakest thing.
Yeah, I'm not.
But I'm so clear about Act 3 that I think, like, neither of us has a good reward. Look, her surviving is a good reward, but what's the road back then? What's the resurrection? Like, I'm so confused about where you're going with it. So maybe we should just call it, I've got a crappy reward and let's drink. Because we'll be able to hash out.
Yeah, I think it'll be very clear what the road back is and the resurrection when we talk about it, because those I feel pretty confident in. And
Interesting.
Oh, interesting.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Well,
we are fully diverged here, as much as we've ever been, I think.
Listeners, tweet at us if you found an ultimate boon or reward where, having faced their worst fear, the hero seizes the object of their quest, which is why I saw it was Lori escaping the house. She's looking around, she finds the dead bodies, she gets attacked, and she escapes. So,
oh my God.
All these sightings of this weird guy that she's seen all day, it's confirmed. Yes, there is in fact a weird guy in town, and now he's killing people, and he has now attacked me. That is her reward. It is confirmed that she was right all along. And she survives the first assault, which no other character has done. Everybody else gets immediately murdered. Like, Michael misses her. He's right behind her, and he brings his knife down. He could easily kill her, and he doesn't.
It's a horrible...
He shanks it so bad.
From a story perspective and from a believable... It's just awful. Okay, so I guess I could justify that there's a delayed reward, or that the reward comes out of sequence here. And maybe, like, I haven't watched a lot of horror movies. You know, there's a reward part of it where maybe there's no reward. It gets worse and worse and worse, and the things just stack up. I'm flipping through right now.
All right. Well, that brings us to the end of Act 2, and I think we got to stumble over to the Vogler Lounge and have ourselves an elixir. Since Lori doesn't get one, so we have to have one in her stead. Jeffrey, welcome to the Vogler Lounge.
Well,
here for our Halloween episode. What has bartender Tasha prepared for you this episode?
Actually, because this week has been so insane, the Vogler Lounge had to hire another bartender named Ami Garvin to assist Tasha in preparing cocktails.
Okay.
She has prepared two different themed cocktails for me.
Oh.
one of which is ready now, the other of which I will reveal after you do your cocktail. This cocktail is called Serial Killer.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you can see it. It's like foamy, milky, chocolatey, and then on top of it, it's got cereal, Fruity Pebbles. I don't know why it's not showing up on camera. So it looks like a tiny glass of Fruity Pebbles.
Wow.
So here's the recipe for this cocktail. 1.5 ounces Ron Zacapa.
I have no idea what that is.
No idea, but Ami found some. 2 3/4 ounces milk.
Okay.
1/4 ounce peach schnapps. Half an ounce simple syrup. And 3 pinches of Fruity Pebbles.
3 pinches?
3 pinches.
Of Fruity Pebbles.
So peach sugary milk drink. Serial Killer. Here we go.
Yeah.
Wow. It smells like a White Russian.
No fruitiness on the scent?
That's weird, man.
I'll bet.
Okay, so the first thing I taste is like sweet milk, like the milk from the bottom of the cereal bowl, right?
Right.
And then the sort of medicinal tang of the schnapps comes up. Peach schnapps. That's kind of fruity.
Sure.
And then there's something bitter in there that I can't identify.
Is that what that first ingredient is that neither of us have ever heard of before?
The Ron Zacata? Maybe that's what it is. It tastes almost like bitters, like a toned down bitters, that sort of herbal kind of a vibe. It's very strange.
Okay.
But it's growing on me. Yeah, I would describe it as a fruity White Russian. It's quite refreshing, oddly. It's growing on me as I drink it. So this is the Serial Killer. I'm sorry you can't see it on camera. I will post a photo on the website. Wow. All right. Wow. Bartender Ami coming through with an unusual choice.
Yeah.
The Serial Killer.
Since your quarantini for the Outbreak episode was the last time you had something really bizarre like this, at least to my memory.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I still have an entire box of Emergency from that experiment. All right, Dan, what has Bartender Tasha served you?
I have Elysian Ale, Punkacino.
Oh yeah.
Coffee pumpkin
Oh
ale.
my God.
Now, I don't know if what.
Hold the label up again. It's a jack-o'-lantern drink, or inhaling the fumes of coffee.
Breathing in the fumes of the coffee, I guess. Yeah, I don't typically enjoy pumpkin-flavored things. Well, pumpkin bread I'm okay with, but pumpkin pie I don't really dig. Pumpkin spice ales I don't, or pumpkin spice lattes. That Starbucks drink. I don't typically enjoy those. So we'll see how this goes. I don't know if it's I'm gonna regret this or not, but I'm expecting it to be dark since it's. Oh yeah, can you see that?
Oh yeah, it's dark and it's got a coffee-colored head. At least that's how it looks here.
Yeah, it's certainly darker than other. It's got a tan, beigey look to it. Let's see how it smells. Wow, I can even hear through my noise-canceling headphones. I can hear the bubbles.
Is it snap, crackle, popping?
Ooh, real good coffee and ale scent. I've got some spices. I'm not really sure what kind of spices. I'm not real good at identifying spices in cooked things unless I already know what it is ahead of time. The taste, ooh, huh? Yeah, that's pretty good. What does the bottle say? Pumpkin ale with the attitude of a world-weary barista. Punkacino packs a short shot of Stumptown coffee. Oh, so okay. In your pint. This is not a pint bottle. Anyway, with just a shake of cinnamon and nutmeg. Okay. Ooh, warning, contains lactose.
So does mine. It is not a vegan beer.
So, Coffee pumpkin ale with cinnamon and nutmeg. Okay, that's all it says.
Is there
It's 6% alcohol.
Okay.
Unfiltered, may contain sediment.
Lucky.
I can definitely taste there is a pumpkin-y flavor to it. It doesn't... I don't know if they've got pumpkin in it. I guess they'd have to, right? For pumpkin ale, unless they found a combination of other ingredients that produce a pumpkin-like flavor.
Maybe it's just the nutmeg that sets off your memory of what pumpkin pie and
It
pumpkin
could be.
lattes.
It could be. I do enjoy this, though. I'm surprised.
Huh.
I got it because it was interesting, but I was also reticent because... Reticent? No.
Yeah.
That means not talking much, isn't it? Hesitant. But anyway,
No.
I didn't want to drink it. But this is pretty good. I will enjoy drinking the rest of this.
Dan, the jack-o'-lantern on the bottle connects to the movie in many ways. Obviously, it's Halloween themed, but
yes,
not only is there a jack-o'-lantern being carved, there is a jack-o'-lantern on the porch of Laurie's home, and there is a jack-o'-lantern on the railing of the Doyle's home, which appears whole, and then later in the movie, toward the end, appears squashed, as though someone has crushed the top in. But perhaps the most poignant use of a jack-o'-lantern is the lit candle jack-o'-lantern on the bedside table in the master bedroom where Linda and Bob go at it.
Yeah.
I'm like, who puts a jack-o'-lantern on their bedside table and light? Like, that is just...
Here's what
it's going to rot so fast.
Here's what I'm going to say. Linda and Bob have already shown complete disregard for this house that they are crashing.
Oh, for sure.
So...
For sure.
I'm going to say that they took a jack-o'-lantern from a different part of the house and then put it on that bedside table and lit it for ambiance while they're stooping. And
do you want to wave? Sorry, do you want to wave to the cat? My bartender just stepped in. Do you want to wave? This is going to be recorded for the podcast.
Hi, Ami.
Bonus content.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, everybody. Well, good job,
awesome.
Ami. Not that I know from experience, because I'm just drinking beer and not your delicious cocktail. But that's awesome that she found that. This is a good beer. I'm gonna enjoy this.
It's not over, because Ami just brought me my second cocktail.
Ooh,
this is
we can see
a pumpkin old-fashioned. You can see
I just threw up in my mouth a little bit.
It's got an orange slice and a sprig of fresh rosemary from our garden.
That looks fascinating.
And I must mention that this recipe was given to us by Melanie Nelson and Mac Caudle, two of our patrons. Okay, friends of the podcast. So 1.5 ounces of bourbon. We used Maker's Mark 46. Half an ounce of half an ounce of brandy-based orange liqueur. I think we use Grand Marnier. 1 ounce of maple syrup, although they told us to cut that in half. 2 tablespoons pumpkin puree, a dash of bitters, an orange peel, a rosemary sprig.
Wow.
That's a lot, right?
That's complicated. A lot more than I would go through if I were making a drink for myself.
The rosemary is overpowering, so I'm just going to set it aside here. Smells like an old-fashioned. Got the orange and the bourbon.
Yeah.
I don't smell any pumpkin, so it'll be interesting to see how it tastes. Here we go.
That's weird, because there's pumpkin puree in it. I would think that would have been the dominant scent.
Oh my God.
Only pumpkin old-fashions from now on?
That tastes exactly like a pumpkin old-fashioned. There's nothing about this that doesn't deliver exactly
what you'd
what
expect.
It is.
Yeah.
My only complaint is that the pumpkin puree is, the texture of it is sort of weird in a cocktail.
Yeah.
If you were to powder it and dissolve it somehow, maybe. But man, that tastes delicious. I think I'm going to set Serial Killer aside for now and let the Fruity Pebbles get soggy while I finish this. Well done, Ami. And thank you, Mac and Mel, for the recipe.
Wow. That's great.
I love bourbon.
Yeah.
And I love old fashions, and this hits the spot.
That's good. Well done. I am happy for you that you got 2 successful experimental cocktails.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Hero's Journey podcast. We're all done now. We're all done here. How are you? You don't have to. I don't want to do Act 3. I'm going to just drink my
already
cocktails.
Checked out of this episode anyway because of our butchering of the ordeal.
You know what? Joseph Wilbur, patron Joseph Wilbur, tweeted or Instagrammed that he's going to do his own analysis. So I hope Joseph Wilbur does so that we can hear how he got past these hurdles.
Yes. I would hope that all of our listeners at least do that as a part of their experience. If they know the film or the book that we are covering, if they mentally pick out points and see if we agree with them, and then tweet at us when we don't agree.
I had a sudden vision of David Kalikas driving to work, listening to this episode, pounding on his steering wheel, going, "No, you're wrong." So maybe he'll correct us.
Okay.
All right.
We're getting punchy now. Let's wrap this up. Move on to Act 3.
Yes.
Of Halloween. Act 3 of the hero's journey begins with the road back.
Dan, I'm just gonna interrupt you here.
Yes.
While bartender Ami was making a cocktail, I made a desperate dive back into Vogler to see if I couldn't make one last ditch attempt to find a reward that's earlier in the movie that justifies the ordeal that I identified.
Uh-huh.
Deep in the bowels of the second edition of The Writer's Journey by Christopher Vogler on page 189, I'm quoting here from the section of reward called Distortions. Another error heroes may make at this point is simply to underestimate the significance of the supreme ordeal. Until now, Michael Myers has been stalking our hero and, by extension, her girlfriends. This is when he closes in on them. He brings the violence to their doorstep. And Annie is on the phone with Laurie when Myers kills the dog right outside her window. She hears it barking and stop barking. And she immediately says, "Oh, he stopped." But she has just witnessed the sound of death and is denying it. This is underestimating the significance of what just happened. Likewise, Tommy, for the first time, sees Michael Myers on their street in front of the house. And he warns Laurie, and she denies him and underestimates the significance. Man, that's as close as I can get to finding something that qualifies as reward. Now, I don't think I've ever taken note of that part of Vogler. I know I've read this chapter several times, and there are other elements of distortion, you know, the hero getting a big ego, the hero getting a taste for blood after battle and temporarily swinging too far to the wrong side. But this really hit me as I was reading this, that particularly Annie, but also Laurie, they make errors of hubris in that moment. So I just thought that was interesting, and that illuminated it for me.
I see where you're going, but I don't think it's hubris at all. Annie already hates the dog, so when it stops barking, she's just glad it's not barking. I suppose any of us who know anything about dogs, we hear that squeal by the dog and we know, oh, that dog has just been injured. But Annie says, I guess he's found himself a date. She interprets the sound as the dog having doggy times because she just doesn't understand dogs and therefore deserves to be a victim.
And what about Laurie's
of Michael's Laurie?
What about Laurie's denial? Because she's seen him multiple times.
Yeah, but when she looks out the window, she doesn't see him.
But she's experienced that several times, and she's experienced it in front of Annie, and she stuck to her guns and said, "I saw him."
Uh-huh.
So she's actively denying something she's already witnessed multiple times in the movie.
True. Yeah. She has also tried to convince herself that she's just seeing things. When she's laying on the bed, she says, all right, Get yourself together. This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then in the car later, when Annie says, are you still spooked? And Laurie says, I wasn't spooked. That's her accepting that she's maybe not seeing what she thinks she's been seeing. Because, again, we've, like the moment in the window when he's standing in the laundry, in the clothesline.
Mm-hmm.
We see Laurie not look away from the clothesline. But when the camera looks at the clothesline, he's not there. So where the heck did he go? He just vanished into thin air.
Well,
So there's a lot of trickery in the movie that causes Laurie and the viewers to doubt whether or not he was even there in the first place.
Yeah.
Also, it's Halloween night. There's people in costumes walking around. So,
well, I'm curious to hear what the road back for you is and how you place that.
All right. Well, then I will continue.
Yeah.
With the road back, where the hero is pursued by vengeful forces disturbed when they seized the object of their quest. Joseph Campbell calls this the magic flight. If the hero had permission to seize the object of their quest, they are assisted in their escape. Otherwise, they are pursued by the dragon. Laurie, fleeing the Wallace home and fleeing the immediate threat, she runs next door and pounds on their door, screaming for help. That neighbor opens the blinds, sees Laurie in distress, closes the blinds, and turns off the light. There is no help for Laurie. So Laurie then runs across the road back to the Doyle house. That was supposed to be funny.
Oh.
But she's locked out. The whole time she keeps looking back toward the Wallace house, and she sees Michael Myers pursuing her at a walking pace. Now she's pounding on the front door, and she's rummaging in her pockets. And she cries out, "Keys!
The keys! Oh, the keys!"
And I think this is referenced in the 1985 movie Better Off Dead, when Lane Meyer is being pursued by the paper boy and he can't get into his car, and he turns around and puts his back to his car and he screams, "Keys!"
Wow, what a connection.
I think that is a reference to this scene in Halloween. Laurie wakes Tommy up by throwing a flower pot up against the side of the house, and he comes down, unlocks the front door, and lets Laurie in, and she is now, quote unquote, safe inside the house. She has temporarily, albeit for a very short period of time, escaped the threat. That is what I saw as the road back.
All right. Interesting. Why don't you go into resurrection here? Because to me, the road back are the murders, and resurrection is the final battle with Michael Myers, which you've just skipped half of.
Not really.
All right. Yeah, just continue. I surrender. I don't.
Your reward is Annie surviving being locked in the laundry room, but she's murdered immediately after that. She doesn't survive being locked in the laundry room. I don't see how that's a reward for Laurie. What? I'm ignoring what?
You're ignoring what I just said after the break, but.
Well, tell me again. Tell me again.
Why don't you just continue? Because I've already stated my points as clearly as I can, and you disagree, and I'm not quite sold on what you said. So I
typical hero's journey fashion.
So there's no point in me. I mean, I've already said what I think the road back is. So I got to know what your resurrection is then.
Okay, well...
So why don't you just do resurrection?
All right, the resurrection. The hero faces death one more time in a final battle or showdown. And this time, the danger is at the apex. So Laurie thinks she's safe inside the house, but then she sees an open window in the living room. And as she cowers by the couch, Michael rises up from behind the sofa, and again, suddenly his ability to make contact with his victims fails miserably as he shanks the strike and he stabs the sofa seat instead of Laurie. And she retaliates with a crochet needle that she has collected.
Yeah.
Stabs him in the neck. He pulls out the needle and falls to the ground immobile. Laurie pulls the knife out of the couch, looks over at Michael, sees him laying stationary, not appearing to be breathing or anything. He's just there in the bloody knitting needle lying on the carpet beside him. And so she then tosses the knife away and runs upstairs to check on the kids. We see Loomis stumbling around in the dark looking for any sign of trouble. Back in the Doyle house, Laurie's upstairs and she tells Tommy and Lindsay that she killed the boogeyman. And Tommy says,
You can't kill the boogeyman.
Just as the shape climbs the stairs behind her.
Get in there, come on, Tommy. Now lock the door.
She then takes the kids, hides them, and then hides in a closet with the most flimsy door I think any of us have ever seen, and tries to tie it shut with some kind of a cloth belt or sash or something. And then she cowers in the corner, making very loud and obvious whimpering sounds. So it's unsurprising that Michael immediately hones in on this place. Now, we've already seen how strong Michael is. He could, I think, have ripped those doors right off their rails. But he instead shakes them. Rattle, 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 to make Laurie freak out and whimper and cry and squeal even more before he punches through the slats with his fist.
The physics in this movie are questionable. Like, if you punched that, it would just open the door before it would shatter the door like that. Because it's one of those
Maybe he was holding it. He was holding the handle on the outside, giving it resistance so that when he punched forward, his fist would go through the slats rather than just driving the door inward off its rails. Because again, Michael wants to terrify. He's not just looking to murder, he wants to toy with people. Michael busts through the door. She grabs a coat hanger, unfurls it, and stabs him in the eye with it. He recoils, drops his knife. She grabs the knife and jams it up into his gut or his chest or something. He falls back and once again is motionless. Laurie gets out of the closet, again throws the knife to the side, runs to where the kids are, tells them go down the street and call the police. The kids flee screaming from the house just as Loomis is walking by, and he realizes something's up, so he runs into the house. Now, one of the best shots of this film is right now when Laurie is slumped up against the door frame, and we see Michael out of focus in the background, lying on the carpet, and he rises up from the waist. He just sits up. He doesn't use his arms to push himself up or anything. He just sits up, robotic. And then his head turns, just his head, not his upper torso, not just the head, turns to look at her. And then as Laurie stands up, he stands up. Laurie starts to leave the bedroom. The shape attacks her. She pulls the mask off, and it's just a guy. And he's more concerned with covering his face than attacking Laurie because he pushes her away and then takes the time to put the mask back on. As Loomis arrives at the top of the stairs, shoots him 6 times. He falls off the second floor balcony, once again, motionless. Laurie says to Loomis, "It really was the boogeyman." And Loomis says, "Yes, as a matter of fact, it was." And then as he goes to look over the balcony, he sees that Michael has disappeared yet again. He is an unkillable force. Laurie survives the encounter. Michael, however, despite 3 different moments where he appears to have been defeated, he has his own resurrection here when he disappears once again.
Well,
do we agree at least about that? I mean, you sounded so confused that was...
You have all of my resurrection in Resurrection. You just have half of my resurrection in Road Back, and most of your Road Back is my ordeal.
Yeah.
And like I said, you're probably right, Dan. I got so frustrated with this movie in general. I think your analysis is probably more sound. I hated watching this movie, and I hated it watching a second time. And I don't know if that colored my ability to analyze it. I don't know if it's just the week I had or if I'm just not thinking clearly, but I get everything you're saying, and it still doesn't make sense to me. It's not landing on me like, oh, like lots of times you'll analyze and I'll go, yeah, okay, yeah, I get it.
I feel like this happens more often than it doesn't happen, though.
I think I don't know, there's been several episodes in the last 6 months where I feel like you brought me around. Your analysis is far more sound than mine. I will grant you that. I don't quite. You
don't agree with it. You don't get it.
Maybe it's just running time, or maybe it's. I mean, the murders being. I don't know.
Well, as you tell me just about every episode when we have this disagreement about what the ordeal is and whatnot, is to find the reward.
Yeah.
And Lori being the first person that Michael isn't able to immediately kill, and then she escapes. That seems to be...
But the battle between them continues.
Yeah.
So her ultimate survival is not complete at that point. She doesn't escape. He pursues her across the street.
But that's every hero's journey.
The stakes get worse.
That's every hero's journey. Except the very few that we've covered where the hero actually dies in the end. But there's always the close scrape with death.
Okay. Yeah, I see that. Return with the elixir. The hero, having won some precious treasure or reward. Wow. Having won some precious treasure or reward, now returns to the ordinary world to share the spoils of battle. Loomis looks down at the poorly maintained lawn, and Myers is gone. Chilling piano music. Then we see cuts of the house, and then we see the exterior of the house, and we're hearing heavy breathing in the voiceover. And then we cut to the Myers house, and we fade to black. The return to the ordinary world, if the ordinary world is Michael Myers is a killer and he's threatening people, we're back. We're back to that, I guess, if that's the ordinary world. But I think obviously it's a sequel opening. And
sure.
It's clear that we haven't defeated Michael Myers, that he's still alive, and this isn't over.
Yeah, I like the look on Loomis's face when he looks over the rail and he sees that Michael is gone. He doesn't have a look of shock on his face. It's more of a resigned, I knew this was going to happen.
Yeah.
It's going to continue. And it does, because 3 years later, there was Halloween 2, which takes place immediately after this.
Oh, really?
Here's something.
Uh-huh.
The end credits list Tony Moran as Michael, age 23. But Michael was 6 when he murdered his sister in 1963, and the events of this film take place in 1978, 15 years later. So he'd be 21, not 23.
Is there a time dilation between Haddonfield and the...
There could be. I think that's an unexplored element of this film. I haven't seen all the sequels, so maybe they do explore that later.
Explain that at some point.
Laurie lives to scream another day in Halloween 2, and Halloween 7, and Halloween 8, and Halloween 11, which is just called Halloween, but isn't a remake of Halloween or Halloween, which was a remake of Halloween. And Halloween
if you
12,
enjoyed this episode, we have
13.
Lots of others you might like too. Like and subscribe. Please rate and review. It helps our new listeners find us. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram. And if you would like to support the podcast, please visit patreon.com/Heroes Journey Podcast to learn more.
Thank you to all patrons who made this show possible, including our demigod patrons, Scott Sanford, Ricky Garvin, John Peterson Jr., Jeff Scott, Joseph Wilbur, Michelle Calderon, Ami Garvin, who doubled as bartender for Jeff this episode, Salathiel Jones, and Jasmine and Peter Hudson.
Special thanks to Dean Ethington for designing our logo, to Taylor Jordan for composing the Hero's Journey theme, and Jason Dorff for our really cool episode artwork. Links to their portfolios can be found on the About page of heroesjourneypodcast.com.
Halloween is copyright 1978, Falcon International Productions.
Thanks for listening. Until next time,
journey on.
I can tell you're frustrated that I'm not capitulating enough. So let me say this. I capitulate, you're right. I'm just still confused and frustrated. So I'm not digging my heels in and saying I'm right. I'm just saying I'm still confused. I don't know that any amount of explanation will change my confusion. And that's not representative of the weakness of your argument. That's just representative of my frustration and confusion about this movie. Heavy breathing.